So hello everyone and welcome to our Wednesday one-on-one webinar. I'm Leslie Scott. I'm the founder of Re.Useful, and we're a nonprofit that helps people live more sustainably and are excited to welcome Lindsay Hoyt here today with Bonnie and Time to talk about native plants. I know fall/winter is officially come to Kansas City finally. I just picked all my tomatoes yesterday, as a matter of fact, believe it or not, on November 19th. So that was kind of weird, but here we are. And the good news is that the cool weather is going to give us some time to think about next year and what we want to have in our gardens. So I'm going to go ahead and give you just a brief overview of Reuseful and who we are and how you can use our website to find a place where you're still good stuff if you're in the Kansas City area. And also, if you're not, how you can just stay up on the upcoming webinars that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and just give you just an overview here of the site, and then we'll hand it right on over to Lindsay. There we go. All right, so Reuseful, as I mentioned, is a nonprofit organization that um, helps people live more sustainably. And we have this site that you can use to find a place for your stuff. So our charity partners sign up to join the charity partner community. So we have nonprofit organizations, schools, and churches. And we have about 100 or so now that are active in our charity partner community. And then should you have something that you wanted to donate, then you can click on donate, and you will get this site. And here we'll click on reset. And you're able to choose how you would like your items picked up. Maybe you have a large appliance that you'd like to donate. You're good with selecting any kind of organization. And then, oh, there we are. Let's say, surely we have some folks. And then you're going to get a list here. And you can find out more by clicking on their link, and as well as contact them by email to arrange for your donation, and then find out a little bit more about them. And if you are like, oh, well, they're a little far, I might not ask them to come get my washer, but I might want to support them through a cash donation, or it sounds like a really great organization I might want to support with my time. You can learn how to do that on their volunteer sign up as well. You find out what type of organization they are, all the different items they accept, and in that way you can find an organization that actually takes your items versus just wondering and dropping it off and hoping they can use it. We also have we have our events calendar here. You can see this is our event for today. And then you can always see our upcoming webinar schedule here as well. If you want to stay up to date on everything that's happening, you can sign up for our newsletter. And the site is free for everyone to use. And we also have other in-person events. We just had a repair cafe on Saturday where we had nearly 50 people come with their broken items, and we attempted to fix those items for them at no charge. And then we also have Undumpster Day, which is an in-person donation collection event where people can drive up with their gently used items, and we have a collection of our charity partners there who will accept those items and um, put them to good use. So with that, I am going to go ahead and stop my share and hand it over to Lindsay, who is going to school us on all things native plants. Welcome, Lindsay.
Thanks. Thank you, Leslie. We actually went to one of the recent events that you put on, and my daughter picked out some very fancy clothes. So thank
Yes,
you
our
for what
clothing
you do.
swaps. I forgot about our clothing swaps.
Yeah. Let me see. I will start sharing. Thank you for joining us, everyone. My name is Lindsay, and let's see. Did I share that?
Not yet. Up
All
there it
right,
goes.
here we go. Okay. So my business is called Bonny in Time, and I design gardens using native plants that are beautiful through the year. My background's in graphic design, actually, and I have pivoted in my career to designing with plants instead of paper, and this feels much better for me. I get to take care of the environment, and now I'm going to help some people learn how to do this for yourselves as well. Let's see. So I just want to introduce, kind of give you an overview of what all the topics I'm going to cover, and then we'll all try to keep an eye on the questions as we go through. There'll definitely be time for questions and answers at the end. So I'm going to go over just getting started and preparing your site, and then we'll talk about how to choose plants that will thrive in your space, basic design principles, and then what to expect over the first few years, and then tips for supporting some key wildlife species. And then at the end of my presentation, I have a QR code that you can scan and download a more extensive version of my presentation. It's a document that I created for my clients. If I have a client that is a design only client, I give them this information so that they feel confident getting started in their garden. So let's get started. So the first thing, okay, is everyone seeing that? Is there still a green
No,
bar on the top of my screen?
no,
Or is everyone just seeing from
everything's
hearing?
fine.
Okay. Okay. So the first step for creating your garden is preparing your site. And some so I have a photo of my husband here on the right. This is a monarch garden that we put in this past year. And before we put the edging in, I took my hose out and I just laid it on the ground to get a form or a shape of something that I liked. And the first step is I always cut an edge in and define the space. So if you can define your space to get it started and create that edge, that is step one. And I like to use this method of smothering. I don't know if any of you are big avid gardeners. Smothering is a great method. There's a lot of reasons why. I can talk a little bit about them, but smothering mostly is just a lot easier on your body. So you can take cardboard. We shop at Aldi, and or if you shop at Costco or someplace, start collecting cardboard. Try to get cardboard that is relatively ink free. Most inks are water-based inks and probably aren't that bad for the soil. When they break down, they'll probably break down fine, but ink free is best, and uncoated cardboard. Then rip all of the tape that holds the boxes together, rip that off, flatten them out and soak them. And once and here I've, done a bit of the edging kind of happened after some of our cardboard in this image, but basically soak your cardboard until you can rip it. And that way, when you get to, if you have a nice curved edge, you could just kind of rip around your shape and stuff that cardboard in where your edge is. And then you want to put on a couple of inches of mulch, topsoil, or something else to kind of hold that cardboard in place, keep it moist, and so it will break down over the course of a few weeks. And then on top of that, I usually add pine bark mulch. You could also add leaf litter, free mulch, anything to just hold that cardboard in place. Leaves might blow around if you don't have plants in there, but I like to use pine bark mulch. It stays in place, it holds everything down, and and then you already have your mulch in place for when you plant. And then when you plant, you can just easily move your couple inches of mulch out of the way, dig a hole into your cardboard, and plant your plants. So why do I like to smother? I do want to talk about this for a minute because yes, it's easier on our bodies, but also it helps keep our soil structure intact. A lot of people now are talking about how important the soil is, and that the roots that are currently in your soil are they plants will kind of take off some of their roots every year. Those roots decompose and create air pockets. The air pockets then can filter water, and then worms and other fungus and bacteria live there too, and they help kind of move that soil around and really keep it intact. And so by just putting a smothering that ground cover, your turf, whatever it is, instead of scraping it up, you're kind of keeping your soil structure intact, not hurting any worms or bacteria that can help our plants thrive once we plant them. But also, there's a weed seed bank that lays under our turf that we don't know about. And when you scrape up or till, you're potentially tilling up these seeds, and then you mulch on top of that, and all of a sudden you have so many weeds. So this is really an ideal method if you have a nice flat area. You may choose a different method if your garden area is on a steep hillside, but this is really a great method. So try your cardboard method. Oh, sorry about that. So the next step is planning and planting, or I call it my research and design stage. So once your garden is prepped and ready, and this is a great time of year, even if it's cold out, if you have a nice warm day in the winter, you can, before the ground is frozen, you can prepare that garden and let it sit still for a long time. Um, or you can do it in the spring, early spring in March, and by April or May, you'll be ready to plant. So wintertime, though, is a great time to plan your garden. Even if you don't have time now to do your smothering and preparing, you can still skip that step and move on to this step. This step, I have some images here. This first image on the left is a home that I put a front yard garden in, and around it you can see images of the plants that I ended up choosing. So what I like to do, and this is what I used to do when I worked as a graphic designer in my research, I don't know if anybody uses Pinterest. Let's see. Oh, I have lost. Can you make sure you're checking the questions? I've somehow it is not on my screen. Here it
Yeah,
is.
you won't be able to see the questions if you're sharing.
Okay, thank you. So let's see, where am I? So while you're waiting, you can assess your site first. How much sun do you get and how much shade do you get? Because that will determine what plants you would be able to put in your space. And please don't try to put a shade plant in a sun area or a sun plant in a shade area. Or if your space is low lying and when it rains, you get rain that just kind of stands there, then that's a perfect site for a rain garden. So really pay attention to the spot you've chosen. Try to remember as best you can about how much sun does it get, How much sun does it get in June, the end of June when we have the most amount of sun? Because that's really what you're planning for. And morning sun, if you get morning sun and afternoon shade, those plants you might be able to choose a more shade tolerant plant rather than a plant that gets morning shade and afternoon sun, just because the sun inherently is a little bit stronger and hotter at the end of the day. So you've taken into account your conditions, and then you start researching. And I have a few places I start my research at that are great. Missouri Wildflowers Nursery. I know we have someone from North Carolina. There are other resources as well. Uh, for plant finding, find a place that you can selectively choose um, like drop down menus. Missouri Wildflowers Nursery has drop down menus. You can say, I'm looking for wildflowers. You want flowers, you want floriferous garden, but my site is half sun. So I can go and say mostly sunny or part sunny, and my garden is wet. It's a rain garden, and I can choose those things. And they have filters you can filter out, and you're not even looking at plants that are not going to thrive. That just kind of makes it easier. You start finding things you like, either take a screenshot of those images, or I use Pinterest as well. I don't know if anyone uses Pinterest. And I grab those and I put them all together in a space. I can see them together. I can see what colors are they? How big are they? You're taking all these notes. Don't skip this step of the process. You really need to know the final size of your plants and that they will be able to handle the conditions that you're putting them in. So you have made your final list. You've decided, I like these plants. These plants will go well together. Have a mixture of heights. Choose a mixture of bloom times. The colors don't necessarily matter because they will probably not all be blooming at the same time. Uh, Ideally, you'll be choosing plants that have extended bloom periods or that bloom sequentially over time so that you're helping the wildlife, because that's honestly the best part of native gardens is watching all of the critters that come and visit your garden. So you visualize your plants. Maybe you have a spreadsheet. If you're a spreadsheet person, writing them down and making your list that way to say, how wide is this? What's the spacing? And how tall is this plant? Those are like the main couple of things you really need to know. And then when you start doing your layout or design or thinking about layout, maybe you don't want to do this step. Maybe you're like, this is overwhelming. I'm not going to get out my grid paper. I don't have a computer. You could do a quick little sketch, measure your garden though, find out, if it's a 10 by 10-ish space, you have about 100 square feet, you can go online and find a plant calculator, and you can get the number of plants you need. If you know I have 100 square feet, or can go on Google plant calculator and say, most of my plants have a 12-inch spacing. They'll be 12 inches wide when they're mature. How many plants do I need, and what type of a grid do I need to plant them in? And so now you've got another list on your spreadsheet. You've got your plants, how wide they are, how tall they are, how many plants do I need, and you can decide, you know, an easy design suggestion to make it look professional or intentional is grouping things together. Grouping things together is visually nice for our eyes, because when those flowers are in bloom, you see them all in the one spot. So that's the highlight of your garden when that plant is in bloom, rather than scattering 1, 2, 3 across your garden. Everything is grouped together. That also helps wildlife navigate to find our garden. If you think about being a bird or being a butterfly and you're floating above from very high in the air, if you can see a mass of a color, it's easy for you to navigate down to get your nectar, to find your seeds, or whatever it is you as a wildlife are looking for. So we've got arranging plant. And then when you're arranging, that height comes in play. Say, like this garden I'm showing you has paths on all sides. So the tallest plants are put into the middle of this garden on this image. Um, Whereas if it's against a house, maybe you'll put the tallest plants like here. The tallest plants are up against the house. And this is my house, but and maybe I've planned this a little while ago before I knew a lot. So they're all a little bit tall. But I just widened my path and said, I'm going to be okay with that. And then I put my shorter plants in this garden in front of it over here on the right. And so most of my plants in my monarch garden are not going to get taller than 2 feet. But the plants up against my house all get to be 4 or 5 feet. So if you're walking down the street and you look at my house, it all looks like a continuous garden. And then in this middle image, I have shown here's some fall blooming asters. And because that plant is so big at maturity, this is only one plant over 5 years of time. And behind this shrub is another and another. And so they aren't next to each other, but they make a big statement on their own. And so, those are filled with butterflies in the fall. It is amazing. Bees, butterflies, the plants literally, like they are alive, but like the buzzing makes them feel more alive. It's the most alive you can feel, I think. I don't know. So I'm hoping these images kind of help you see illustrate what I'm when I'm saying planting things that are kind of short. Now this garden was brand new and you can still see a lot of mulch, but ultimately by the end of your garden, when it gets to maturity, you don't really see the mulch. So let's see. So the next thing, so then you've spent your time designing, you spent your time researching, designing, you've got an idea of where you want to put your plants, you're grouping them together, small to tall. Those are kind of the highlights. What do you expect? So you're planting. Now it's time to plant. So this bed, here's a bed that is very, very newly planted. Like I put those plants in the ground, I stepped back, I took a picture. They are tiny, but when they are full grown, they will fill that space and be flopping over the edge. Um, but that first year, we say in the native plant community that your plants sleep. They're not sleeping. They are doing a lot of work. So first year, you'll put in the most effort this year. Think of these plants like babies and you are the nursery slash caregiver. Everyone says, oh, I want a no maintenance garden. That's not a thing. That's absolutely not a thing. The first year, you're going to baby those plants. You're going to have a schedule that you're watering them on. They are spending all of their energy creating extensive root systems. Native plants, I don't know if anybody's seen these slides where you see turf grass has roots that are about this long, and then a native plant next to its roots are way down here on a scale, right? And so first, a lot of plants have long tap roots or they have big fibrous root systems. So they're spending their time this year growing those. And if they don't get enough water, they will die. So they have to have time to get their roots down low enough to reach the water table so that in the next year or the year after, there's not as much watering. And then because there's all this extra space between your plants, you've done a good job smothering your area, but maybe weed seeds fly in and land in your mulch. You're going to watch for weeds. You'll weed a few times through the year. But your plants are babies and growing. Here's another slide of some year one plantings. This slide on the left, that's fairly new. This slide is 3 months after planting, and some of those plants have filled in, but they're still little tiny babes. So then we move on to year two, and we call it the creep year, and you finally start seeing some upward growth on top. You have some flowers. There's a lot less maintenance for your garden this year, and you'll start to see some flowers, but you still see space between. So continue watching for unwanted plants or weeds. And oh, I forgot to mention a trick I like to do first year is because I'm adding so much more water to my gardens, I put annuals in between my perennials that are teeny tiny. And then the annuals will help kind of with that nursery effect, right? You'll get a full effect, you'll get flowers, and then you take them out that first season, the second season, you just let your natives take off. That's just nice little tip. I've done that in this garden. I put in a lot of annuals. Some were for some annuals in, oh, this is the leap year, by the way. Leap year is your plants are established. Finally, you're not watering. You don't really have to water. Water, like watch for signs of stress. If are in a drought year, absolutely water your gardens. Um, Weeding and maintenance is kind of a breeze at this point. You're doing most of your garden tasks in the spring, and you're kind of leaving things up through the winter for wildlife to either get seeds or just for bees and things to overwinter. But you can see here, there's some very established perennials, and not this garden is not all natives. Here's some native cliff goldenrod, but I've put a lot of these annuals in as companion plants for this client. It just is a really beautiful garden. I love being there. And then here's some other, this plant, this garden I kind of highlighted a few times just so you can see that's 3 years. Those verbena have really flushed in and filled that space, and they keep growing. They're taking over my yard. I'm just okay with that. And here is this is the side of my house, and I used to hate mowing it. It was just weedy, gross mess. My neighbors poured a new cement driveway, and this is year 3, and it just popped. It just is amazing. It's one of my favorite gardens now, and I don't really get to see it. It's more for my neighbors. Um, this is other images of like once you've passed that year 3, here's a rain garden. We've got a lot of sedge. The sedges and grasses are low plants. Say you have a very large plant, you can plant short plants in between. So in the spring, this garden is covered in violets. And then the asters, you saw the fall blooming asters. Here they are in the summer. They just look like shrubs. Coneflowers, a great flower for continuous blooms, can handle sun to shade, and they can handle wet and dry. You could put purple coneflowers in any garden. It's like a winner. Finch love the seeds. They're beautiful. They have multiple blooms if you cut them. Here's some bergamot and some coneflowers together. So why are we doing this? We do it for ourselves, of course, but a lot of people there's a movement and people want to support wildlife. They want to have, they're helping a conservation effort. At the end, I have a few websites I can share with you of places you can go to get more information than what I'm giving you in this short time. But I wanted to highlight some of the wildlife that we support when we're planting native plants. And we don't have to plant trees necessarily for birds. That's great. Planting trees and shrubs eventually gives them places to nest. But all those flowers, those coneflowers, those asters, all those things we leave up in the winter. I leave all the plants. I tell all of my clients, leave your plants up through the winter. I've already seen juncos coming into Kansas City. They hop around, they're little tiny gray birds, so cute, and they will feast on those aster seeds, goldenrod seeds, coneflower seeds. Finch love them. And you'll notice like your goldfinch turn brown in the winter. They don't look the same as this beautiful little Goldie. But you'll start seeing all these birds when you leave your flowers up. So that's one of the big highlights on this slide I wanted to talk about. But also, if you're supplemental feeding your birds, if you have feeders, and all wildlife needs water. So make sure you're keeping your feeders clean and having access to water that's not frozen in the winter. Solar, if you get a little solar panel to warm up that water. I've seen a lot of people doing some cool DIY things to give their birds access to drinking water in the winter. And then, oh, I do also wanted to talk about turning off your outdoor lights. It's more important for people who live out in the country. Birds especially migrating species, need the stars to navigate, and lights from our cities and from our homes, and too much outdoor light, it interferes with their navigation. So if you are able to turn your lights off at night, that is in some small way supporting birds, especially spring and fall during their migration period. It also helps with moths too. so they don't continually fly at the lights. But so then bees, wasps. I love bees. Our native bees are gentle little bees. I have these big bumblebees and these little bumblebees. If you plant something like a zinnia, sometimes I find them asleep underneath the petals. And if you find a sleeping bee, it's a native bee, you can pet it. They are very docile. Is people, a lot of people say, oh, I want to have butterflies in my garden, but I don't want bees. And I'm sorry, they just kind of come, they come together, and bees and wasps are some of our best pollinators, and you want them in your garden. They're going to help. Like if you put some native forbs near where your vegetables are growing, you're going to have more vegetables. If you put those native forbs near your vegetable garden, they will attract beneficial insects. And it's just all good things happen from native plants, in my opinion. So things that you can do to support bees. Our native bees are mostly solitary bees. They don't live in colonies. What they do is they use hollow stems or they dig holes in the ground. And that's where they will overwinter. They will put their larvae, they will get their pollen and pack it in. So when you're doing your garden cleanup in March, mid-March, early March, depending where you are, you want to leave some of your stems, especially on any kind of goldenrod species or monarch bee balms, bergamot, bee balms, monarda species. They have nice hollow stems, and the bees will go and use them, and you won't see them. They'll just be in there, these little tiny larvae growing all through the sun, all through like half the summer. They come out, they'll be seen for a couple of weeks, and then those bees will find other stems and put their larvae in, and those larvae will overwinter. So you'll see those plant stems when you're cleaning your garden up, but trust me, it's just like a few weeks of stem, and then all of a sudden your plants grow big and you don't even see them. So, leave your stems. The leaves, I know this is there's a lot of talk. I'm sure everybody's said, oh, leave your leaves, leave your leaves. If you live in the city and you've got big trees, I live in the south part of Kansas City. We have a lot of big oak trees. My grass gets covered. I do have areas of grass in my lawn that I want to keep as grass so that we could kick the ball with my daughter or do other things. So if I left all of those leaves to compost down, we would have no grass. They would be smothered. So what I do is I will rake my leaves into a pile underneath my trees. I will rake them into, so like plan it, if you plan your gardens along fence lines, then it's an easy place. Just rake them over to the edge, spread them out. They become your mulch for the next year. Little critters overwinter in them. They become a blanket for those bees that are hibernating in the underground. So let the leaves, yes, use your leaves. I wouldn't say leave your leaves, but use your leaves. Don't bag them and get rid of them and dump them into the trash. Let those little insects overwinter in them. There are caterpillars in them that will turn into moths, that will turn into butterflies that we don't really see. They're kind of, they try to hide. Um, let's see, my favorite, and probably everyone's favorite are butterflies, right? They're like little garden fairies that come visit us in the spring and summer, and they're gone in the winter. Um, I love butterflies. My daughter and I have raised monarchs for 2 years in a row now. It's a fun activity. Uh, it's fun to watch. Complete metamorphosis is really spectacular. So when we garden and we want to attract butterflies, the main thing you need to do is research the butterflies you want to attract and plant food for the caterpillars. Those butterflies are not going to, we think of people think, oh, I'm going to plant a butterfly bush and I'm going to get a lot of butterflies. And you might get butterflies coming to use those flowers. That is great. I mean, it's a great nectar source. Don't not put a butterfly bush in unless in your area it is invasive. Always check to make sure what you're planting is not invasive before buying. So that's one of the first things I go over with clients as we look around them and I point out this is an invasive species. We need to address this before we move on to planting new plants. But um, like monarchs can only eat milkweed as caterpillars. And every place that you find a monarch, there is a type of milkweed that is native to your area. The best types of milkweed for you to plant are native to your area. And that is an easy thing to look up in the Xerxes Society. Journey North would have that information. Monarchwatch.org has information about that. That's in my resource list at the end. Um, there's, I don't know if there's anyone. I mean, I did see someone from North Carolina, but especially in Texas and in Florida, there are exotic species of milkweed that people are planting, and they will bloom very late into the season. And the problem is those monarchs are continuing to stay and not migrate. And so another nuanced thing about gardening, you have to really know, and people will see the milkweed, buy the milkweed, think they're helping monarchs, but then if you choose to plant that plant, that's fine. You need to cut it down as your native milkweed species start going dormant to encourage those monarchs to move along. So um, what else? Butterflies. Oh, so caterpillars need food. Their food are leaves. If you want a specific caterpillar, research what that caterpillar food is and expect your leaves to be eaten. Plants will regenerate. I'm sure everyone who has a herb garden has planted parsley, and maybe you find caterpillars on your parsley. Just plant enough for you and them. Those turn into black swallowtails that are beautiful. Uh, what else? Puddling. Okay, so we talked about every species needing water and food. So puddling stations for butterflies. They drink nectar. Yes. Is that their whole source of water? No. You can create these you could do it very artistically, or it could be as simple as you have an extra plant tray that you put some rocks, some dirt, some salt, and keep it moist. The salt and the dirt have minerals in it. Specific types of stone, like limestone, is in fact, they are minerals. So when they're wet, butterflies will come and they will drink the water from that to get their minerals. So puddling stations are great if you're butterfly gardening. Continuous nectar plants, whether that is continually, successionally blooming perennial species, or having an area or another garden that is for annuals. Butterflies like big flowers that look like landing pads. So if you are planting zinnia, your zinnia, the best zinnia is the kind that have a defined center, because it is like a bullseye for them to come land on. They love coneflower. So you can see here, this is the orange king zinnia. This one is a multi-petaled zinnia, but hey, that swallowtail didn't care. Um, and then including areas for pupation. So you've got your caterpillars. If you've densely planted your plants, you followed instructions on how wide things will be, the caterpillars leave their host plant in search of a place to pupate. So you'll probably find chrysalis if you have a garden sculpture, or let's say your puddling station you've raised up. Maybe you have a tomato cage and you've put a big puddling station as wide as the top of that tomato cage. You might find chrysalis hanging on your tomato cage. They find different places to pupate, especially black swallowtails will move very far. Um, I feel like I could do a webinar just on butterflies. So I should probably stop there. But yes, your plants regenerate. You've got flowers for food. You're supporting all this wildlife. It's beautiful. Um, and the last thing I like to tell people is just like, you're doing this, enjoy it. This is fun. We go out for walks and we talk about forest bathing or going out in nature and getting a hike. And yes, that lowers our blood pressure. That makes us feel good. But there is something different about being in nature and seeing the things that happen in and around your plants and what you're supporting and being a part of that. And you don't get that when you're just doing a hike in the woods. I don't know how many of you go to the woods just to sit in one spot for an hour, but I will sit in my yard and watch caterpillars. If I know I have black swallowtail eating my parsley, I go check on them every day. I'm going out to say, oh, where's my babies? Are they big enough to pupate? Can I find where they go? It is a lot of fun. So enjoy your garden. Um, I think I do want to share a few websites. So if anyone wants this plus additional resources, scan this code, or I can put it back up after. Um, that that is
I
it for
can send
this.
the link out too, with the follow-up.
Yes, I can send. Perfect. I can send. I have this as a link. It's a little more extensive. I also have one that's specific for monarchs that I did for the fall festival. Um, and I wanted to share. Can everyone still see this?
Yes.
This, so this resource, my favorite book, the book that pushed me to start my business was Doug Tallamy's book, Nature's Best Hope. And in his book, he talks about he's an entomologist, so he's a bug guy. And he, through his time learning about insects, learned that how important all of these native species are and has started this movement called Homegrown National Park. And on his website, this is a national movement. And so you can go here to find services. He talks about keystone plants. Keystone plants are plants that provide a larger service, just as keystone species, like so an oak is a keystone species because it provides services for many different species of animals, from birds to owls or moths, butterflies. Lots of species use oaks. Keystone species for flowers or forbs might be asters and goldenrods. A lot of species of bugs use goldenrods. So and here is a planting calculator on their website. So you can go say my, oh, how many square feet you have, um, the shrubs, the size of things. So this is a great resource to check out. Um, if you want to see native plants, you're in the Kansas City area, through the growing season, please visit the Conservation Center in Kansas City, the off Truce, Anita B. Gorman Center. All of their gardens are designed with native plants. So you can go and get an idea. And they have gardens, like they have an area that's all wooded. So if you have a wooded yard, you can go look at what's growing there. Now, most of our shade species bloom in spring, but a good place to go visit. Deep Roots is an organization in Kansas City. They have nature advisors. If you feel like you're getting into this and hey, I'm stuck and I need someone to help me, they have people that can come do an assessment with you, get you started. Um, they have events. They have, if you want to volunteer to plant, they do a lot of that. Grow Native. I am a member of Grow Native. You can find native plant professionals such as myself if you are if you need even more help than what Deep Roots can provide. They have a lot of resources. They even have, let's see, landscape plans. This is over my head, Lindsay. You are crazy thinking I'm going to design my own garden. Click on your native landscape plans and you can say, I need to have a butterfly garden or need to have finch or I have total shade. And these have plans right there. You don't even have to decide your shape. Look at that kidney bean. You can have it. I love this is how I got started really as I was a graphic designer and I was like in over my head and I went to Grow Native. I also went to Missouri Wildflowers Nursery and I said, oh, what color do I love? And then I realized it's not about color. You really need to go by how much sun you have, how much. Like my very first native garden was a water garden. And so I just said average to moist because when it rains, I have pooling water, but when it's a dry, it's cracking dirt and not nice at all. And then went to say, I've got mostly sun and a little bit of shade, and all of a sudden look at all of my options. And so these are good places to start. Okay, I love this. I'm going to take a screenshot, or let me do a quick view. I know that it gets 2 feet tall. That's an edge plant, and it is how wide? 1.5 feet. So I might space this 18 inches. So these are these are some really good resources to help get you started if you get feeling overwhelmed. And this is me. You can follow me and I can show you. Here's a garden I just design am redoing at my house. I added compost from my compost bin. I just I have like you get it at the hardware store, it's a spray. I sprayed a line to say that's where I want my edge to be. So it was very easy as I'm using my edging tool to go around, edge it in. I put cardboard on top of my cardboard, I put my compost, and then I put my pine bark mulch. That is just going to sit there. I have no idea what plants I'm planting there yet. I know that they're going to be for butterflies. So probably some golden Alexander for my swallowtails, definitely milkweed. I plant milkweed in any garden I can. Um, so follow me if you would like to. I saw a monarch last week. I thought, oh my God, this lady's not in Mexico yet. So that is my talk. And I think we have some time.
That was great, Lindsay. It's
Thank you.
really helpful. Anyone have any questions? You feel free to go ahead and raise your hand or unmute. Well, I have one. So, um, I am a little bit on the lazy side. I love uh native plants, and but what I will do is plant a few and then fill it in with native plant seeds.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes they get a little carried away and they cover up my native plants.
Oh, do you
It
mean you
gets
get wildflower seeds to put in?
yes, yes.
Uh-huh.
And so but I am so resistant to pulling those out because I just feel like I'm killing, like you said, killing the babies. Um and so do you have any tips for like the um kind of the space around, like how much space should you give around the plants, like when if you are filling in with wildflower seeds?
So that's a great question. I typically don't seed my annuals. Um, One tip I would say is be a little ruthless with annuals. They only have a year life cycle. So if everything is too packed, a few things can happen. You could get powdery mildew, you could get other diseases or pests. The pests and diseases just get, if plants don't have space to breathe, there needs to be airflow through your plants. So leave your perennials in place, but maybe yank some of those annuals out to give them space, or clip them down. A lot of annuals can be clipped and then they'll branch. So like zinnias, you clip, they branch, they keep getting bigger. Um, putting them in pots near, or having a separate garden for your annuals is
Okay.
a good idea. Or choosing annuals that are shorter in stature, maybe not so tall, being more specific about those annuals you're choosing.
Mhm. That's great. So you have a couple of questions in the chat. One is, what do you plant when you have a lot of deer?
Ooh, yes. Similar to rabbits. So I've had several clients in Brookside this year, and for whatever reason, rabbits were a big problem. I haven't had any deer problems, but because we're in the city. Um, if you go to look up your plants on Missouri Wildflowers, I know that there's a deer resistance. So I've also bought plants from a couple of nurseries that are either further north of here or further south of here. Um, and on their search Prairie Moon Nursery, you can look if you're I'm starting a lot from seed, you can go to deer resistant. A lot of those plants are going to be things that are toxic to them. Columbine are a great plant. They welcome um, hummingbirds in the spring. They're that first food source for hummingbird. You'll notice a lot of spring plants, they point down for those ground bees that come up in the spring. So anything spring blooming, you'll notice there are a lot of bell-shaped flowers that point down. Columbine are toxic to deer. Daffodils. And daffodils are not native, but beautiful. And who doesn't want to see a flower in March, right? What else? Any kind of mint, onion, bee balms, Monarda species. Um,
When you
you
say toxic, like, does it just upset their tummy, or like what what would deter them without being, too brutal?
Oh, they won't eat it. You don't worry. You don't have to worry. They know they kind of know and
Okay,
stay away.
great.
So, or the smell of it deters them. They won't come near. So a lot of, if you want rabbits, um, if anybody has to run, please feel free to and email me. You can always email me if you have questions or message me on Instagram or Facebook. That's where I check. So thank you. Um,
Yeah, I think Leah had the second question. Oh, got another one. Um, do you need to get all the weeds out of the garden? Um, and I'm guessing that's before you plant, maybe. And then what's the most frequent work in the daily management of your native garden?
I, I'd say there's no daily work in a garden. I think that when you're starting a new garden from scratch, maybe once a week you're checking to see if it needs to be watered, and you could just dig a little hole with your fingers, insert your fingers or a finger to see if you feel moisture to the tip of your finger about an inch or two down. If you can feel moisture, then you don't really have to do anything. I think spot weeding, if you're out there looking and you see a weed, that's something that I do when I'm just going to look at my beautiful garden. I'll say, oh, there's a plant I don't want, weed, whatever it is, pull it. Um, mm, if you've done a good job smothering, then there shouldn't be as many weeds that first year. It shouldn't be a problem. I have I probably go out and weed once or twice a year just to get things cleaned up a bit. I think
Perfect.
a lot of the movement toward using natives is that once they fill in, they like to kind of mingle and touch. And, I talk about having some space between, but, those, when I have my spring flowers in my garden are a little different than my summer flowers. And I've got a lot of ground cover. So that's violets and things, native violets that are a host plant for great spangled fritillary butterflies. Very cool. If you see them, leave them. People pull violets out of their yard. It's a beautiful early plant. Let it be your ground cover. So you've got that ground cover layer that's kind of suppressing my weeds in the spring.
Mhm.
And then my other forbs grow up over them and then they're shading out. And so then by fall, right now, I just see a lot of brown sticks. But brown sticks are movement and they're seeds, and it's better than bare ground.
Yes,
So
yes, definitely. Well, we're getting close to time. Any last questions? This has just been super helpful, Lindsay, and so informative. And I really appreciate you sharing your resource. We'll send that link out with the follow-up to everyone, and also your presentation so that people have that QR code and everything else. And
I'll send you a link to the more extensive PDF. My PDF has links to nurseries and
right.
resources, so I'll make sure I get that to you before you send the email.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, everyone, for being here. And we'll have another Wednesday 101 webinar in December. And so if you want to follow us on Facebook, we're at Be Reuseful, 2 L's, and we'll get that topic posted soon. And in the meantime, everyone have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.